How does anyone prioritize delivery channels during this customer touchpoint explosion? Especially given how much noise and change is in the market, guiding limited attention is just plain hard. Listen to how these enterprise content leaders are helping their teams face new channel and content delivery opportunities while enhancing the well-established traditional channels.
What kind of new channels have each of us been confronting over the past few years? What are your teams confronting in terms of channels, and how do you prioritize those?
We are very careful on adding new channels. We tend to test and pilot new channels. Before really investing into it, we want to make sure that we are able to bring the right data at the right audience at the right time, right, and the right messaging, which is not it's not easy always with new channels. New channels tend to be quite separate, not so much integrated. Maybe some startups, working with startups, can be challenging. So we spend most of our time on making sure we optimize our more traditional kind of existing channels, paid media channels, search, and it's already, challenging enough to connect the dots between, paid search and display and email and, and this website personalization. So I think, when it comes to new kind of channels like, click to chat, it's a very important kind of interactions that, with our customers. We're testing some AI and, some bots, but I think the key really is to have the right data. So if you have the right data in an integrated fashion in a channel, then you can be much more effective and efficient, especially when it comes to AI or modeling. So I think our priority is always making sure that we have that connection and integration.
Thank you. You mentioned an important word, optimization of existing channels, and later in our discussion, I hope we can return to that. John Henke.
Sure. Yeah. So we, kind of like Alex, we do have some new channels that we're looking at. Voice is probably the biggest one right now. We have a whole journey team dedicated to the voice channel and figuring out how to make Alexa and Google Home do new relevant things for customers. But I think what's really what my team has been focused on, and what's really even maybe more exciting than that is, we're going back to some of our existing channels. We've had online banking at U.S. Bank for over 20 years, and we've had a mobile banking app for, at least 10 years. What we're doing, especially with the mobile app that we just launched last year, is trying to, make the content experience more central, kind of deepen the relationship with our customers, provide them, with financial insights. We call them mobile insights. We're looking at our messaging strategy for things like customer alerts in an entirely different way, right? Whereas it used to be very channel specific and channel focused, things like SMS and email alerts. You can get your alerts in a variety of different ways, right? SMS, email, text. You can get inline messaging in the mobile app or online banking. Up until now, it's been very platform driven, the entire strategy behind that. And I think what we're coming to realize is that's not great for customer experience to have different teams creating basically the same types of messages for all these different channels and presenting them in different ways, oftentimes different wording. So what we're really trying to do, and what I'm trying to focus our teams on, is a more omnichannel, like an omnichannel first approach to content, like this customer messaging. So that's kind of where our work has been and kind of where our focus is right now.
That's beautiful. There's some real change implied in that, from the authoring process all the way through management, all the way through delivery, in order to be able to power up those experiences from a common source. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Julie.
Sure. I think very similar themes. I would add in that for financial services all in all encompassing, it's looking at the human interaction plus the technology. So it's not just a matter of the channel, because the engagement and the conversion through the technology or through the medium is important, but understanding, measuring, and optimizing where is that human touch needed. And so for financial services, something like a mortgage versus a credit card. And I know my friend John's probably going to nod and smile to this as well. You know, we're talking two significantly different experiences as far as the level of touch that's going to be needed. And as much as you can offer a full online mortgage application, there are going to be times that you want to connect that customer for that relevant advice. So how do you add efficiency? How do you study your funnel? How do you know what customers need that touch? And how are you going to measure that overall journey? And to me, that's still something that I think all of us are executing test and learns and measuring and optimizing. And that's the most exciting part that I see happening. And for us in terms of mediums, definitely bots and chat, and being able to do that autonomous integration from technology also to human assist.
Interesting. And you mentioned a word, measurement, which is really interesting to add to our journey mapping. So when we look about customer journey maps or models and how those work, I think it'll be interesting to add measurement to that discussion, because it's such an important part of understanding how we stimulate customer interaction is, in part, relative to how we intend to measure that engagement, and helps to plan out. So I'm really curious to see how teams are putting measurement regimes along with their modeling and mapping programs. Interesting. Thank you very much, Julie. Noz.
We've heard several of the themes already. Unification and integration are becoming fundamental. I think that the understanding of omnichannel is starting to get mainstream. I think that there was still a confusion with the ability to transact on multiple channels and or equivalent experience on multiple channels, as opposed to looking at the holistic customer experience and saying during a journey a customer can move fluidly across various touch points, as Julie said, human, machine, digital, physical, and so on. So it's taking that holistic strategy and coming at that from a customer first perspective. So finally, some organizations are getting to the point where they can start saying that they're really customer centric, whereas most organizations for a very long time have been doing their channel communications based on organizational structures, which were reflecting channel-based teams, which I think John mentioned explicitly. And there's a movement away from that. I'm not going to say there's a mad rush for the door, because we are very attached to those organizational structures, and changing the org chart is a deep cut for an enterprise. But there are certain movements which are too big to deny. So the customer expectations are going up, because we're seeing some market leaders who can do personalization at scale, who can present a meaningful experience that takes advantage of the channel and handles inter-channel handoffs well in a way that adds value. So because the moment that happens, that becomes the new normal. So we're seeing more and more that organizations want to raise to that standard. In terms of actual media or actual channels, I think we've mentioned chatbots. Some of my customers work in devices, so medical devices or high-tech manufacturing, and so they're interested in augmented reality. How can they present an experience both pre and post sales across their relationship for upgrades, cross grades, maintenance, and so on, that leverages the new augmented reality technologies, or mixed reality, which is becoming, I think, a preferable term. And then you already mentioned it already, the on search page, which used to be about SEO, and for me, it's about a bigger movement to presentation-free content. So how can you get your content ready for consumption by a service, like a bot, like a search engine, like anything that's going to pick it up when you don't have presentation control anymore? You're not talking about fonts and colors and branding. You're providing raw, structured content to something else, which is going to lay it out for you according to that service's internal logic.
Yeah, exactly. As John was talking about, that omni-channel content approach it represents a major shift in thinking. But when we get to be endpoint agnostic with the content sets, we create this new set of possibilities that didn't exist before for non-channel specific teams. I think channel specific teams are a necessity in an environment where the system of record for that customer experience is siloed and requires independent management and independent content workflows. But once we have endpoint agnostic structured content, we can deal with different org structures. So I think the org structure is almost a reflection of the tech and the way that the content is structured, vice versa. Sometimes one hand washes the other. Jonathan Foster.
Yes. So this is interesting for me to participate in this conversation because you got to keep in mind, I come from the product side of Microsoft. So I can answer this in a lot of ways. Some of the things that you've all been talking about are things that we're trying to chase down as well. Like how do we create a cohesive experience, whether you're deploying it for an enterprise or whether you're the individual in their home like you guys are right now? How can we create simplicity? And this is, you can hear what I'm saying. I'm coming from the perspective of a design perspective, even though I'm in the content discipline, and we have our channels that we're concerned about. Like, for example, if we need to help people with our products, how do we get that message to them? So we still use websites. We're still concerned about SEO and making sure people are getting the answers that they want. In the product, how can we make sure that people within the product are finding either help or tips or discoverability challenges that we face every day? From one of the areas that one of my teams leans into very heavily based upon my history with Cortana, we were the writing team for Cortana before it was even launched, is a focus on voice and where can that be effective? I mean, the huge surge of speakers in homes is really affecting the way that humans are approaching voice technology. So we're really leaning into not only what would be a voice first, say like in-car experience, but more of a hybrid that could include gesture and gaze. If we start going down those paths, there's a lot of things that have to be worked out, of course, primarily around privacy concerns and people's comfort with these technologies. But we're also leaning into that. And in there, what is included is chatbot development. One of the big things that we focus on is if we're going to create these new channels that are very human-like, then we get very concerned about making sure we're doing the right thing around that. What's the affordance so that people immediately know they're dealing with a technology as opposed to a real human? How can we effectively connect humans with humans? We have a whole initiative around trying to create a connection between the end user and experts. How do we do that? How do we use algorithms to do that effectively? So we're really leaning forward in that way. What's going on currently in the climate right now is going to really be an indicator of where we need to point our resources. For example, the health industry is just overwhelmed right now. We all know that. And so what we're seeing is a real attraction to using those bot technologies to kind of be the first line that the customers or the people in need can get some information, and we can use the human resources where they're needed more direly. So there's a lot of interesting things as far as that specific channel. And I don't think I have too much more to offer, but just keep in mind as this conversation goes along, I'm in the product side at Microsoft working on apps and designing experiences. So this is great. It's great to hear what you all are saying, for sure.
Well, I love it. And I feel like a big part of creating our collective future, more intelligent digital future for everybody is that cross-disciplinary interaction. The design and engineering disciplines, the various kinds of content disciplines. There's whole little worlds within just content, and all of the worlds that relate to the architecture of systems that deliver customer experiences. I think all of us need to have a patchwork of interactions in order to be able to create gestalt effects for our customers, right, that are integrated out of all of these. I think the teams that are succeeding are the ones taking more holistic looks at this. And so this kind of cross-functional dialogue where some of our roles are overlapping in only small areas helps to create a whole picture of how content and customer experience can move forward as an industry.
To listen in on the full Roundtable conversation and others, plus get access to more exclusive insight about omnichannel customer experiences, join the content order for free at simpleA.com.